Happy Wednesday, y'all. All right. It is time for your check-in with your legacy builder coach, LaShawn E. Michael Esquire. And this is the Inner Circle Collective. You know, we are here to help you explore, reflect, develop, and grow. And we're going to continue the conversation for the month of January 2026 in regards to debt management. Of course, I have given you all debt management tools, etc. This week, we're going to continue the conversation in regards to debt management mechanisms. All right. So before we get started, I am LaShawn Michael Esquire, founder and CEO of Sykes Life Estate Planning Company, where we're moving people from financial security to financial freedom while building a financial legacy that'll last a lifetime. You say, LaShawn, how do we do that? Well, we're going to ace that thing. And what that means, we're going to assess, we're going to consult, and then we're going to execute all your estate planning and financial needs. Again, for the month of January 2026, we've been talking about debt management. And of course, I am trying to get you all to reimagine your relationship with your money. Let me say that again. Reimagine your relationship with your money, because I told you all before, if you get a better grasp on what your money can do and realize that money is a resource, then you will be able to not only pay down debt, but you're going to be able to invest and save, and then you can estate plan and do legacy building, which is what we are about around here. We want you to be able to build a lasting legacy that will last a lifetime for you and your family. Well, let's get into it. Of course, we've been talking about debt management mechanism this week, and some of the things that we talked about include, of course, debt management programs. I told you all that, of course, we have been building a house here to kind of tell you all in regards to things that you need to be doing to manage your debt. Of course, I gave you some methods last week: snowball, avalanche, 50, 20, 30 rule, etc. But this week, I wanted you all to get deeper into some debt management tools that you may have to use in mechanisms if those things do not work, or you are still in over your head with debt. If you are drowning in credit card debt, these are some things that you can consider that will help you. First thing we talked about this week is debt management programs. Of course, those programs, are designed to help you negotiate, consolidate your debt into a single monthly payment. There are multiple debt management programs out here, and there are debt management online tools that can help you with your debt management. And for example, if you are $100,000 in credit card debt or $60,000 in credit card debt, and you are making just the minimum payments, I told you all it would take you 30 years to pay off that debt at the rate you're going. And so you have to think about what mechanisms and things you can put in place to help you with that. One of the things to consider is that you need to maybe possibly call a debt management program. And there are programs out here, and at the end of the month, I'll list some. I don't advocate one or the other, but I really hope that you can do this yourself before you get to a debt management program. But if it's not anything else that you can consider, then that may be a tool that you can use, okay? The other thing, as I said, is that a debt management program would then help you craft a budget and help you get to a point that you will not be in a place that you are doing this forever and you're struggling. So we want to make sure that when you're talking about a debt management program, we are talking about something that is going to help you move forward and making sure that you can get all the things you need to be at a place that you are not here again in a couple of years. Because I think the number one thing that we always have to worry about is that you are at a place where you are struggling to get to a point where you are able to manage debt for a long period of time. So often, so many people wind up being right back in debt again because they are struggling to kind of find tools and have a built-in mindset on how they should manage their debt. So debt management programs are one of the things we spoke about, and that's something that you could consider if the methods that I gave you last week are not working. Also, we talked about debt settlement. So, of course, debt settlement is basically negotiating a lump sum payment of your debt with negative credit impacts. So, of course, We have been talking about credit scores. We talked about that at the end of the week in regards to the ranges. We talked about the mix, that the 5 factors that we look at to increase and decrease your credit score. Of course, we talked about payment history. We talked about mix of credit. We talked about debt to credit utilization ratio, or the amount of credit that you're using. We talked about different credit mix. We talked about inquiries, and we talked about how your lift of credit history. And so those are factors. Again, go back and look and listen to that if you need to. Of course, payment history is 35% of this score. And of course, when you are dealing with a debt settlement company, that is the last resort where you can no longer continue to make payments, and you need that company to call your credit card companies and say, LaShawn Michael cannot meet these obligations. Is there something that we could negotiate of settlement for she can then pay that debt off? But remember, because if you are at a debt settlement situation, you'll probably either miss payments, or you're so behind on payments, or you're just paying the minimum and it's not going anywhere, and you continue to spend. The debt settlement can have it will have a negative impact on your credit score. So that is something to consider when you are thinking about debt settlement. It sounds good in theory, but make sure that you are ready for the impact that this might cause your credit score. Doing a debt settlement when you are getting ready to look for a house, or you're getting ready to make a big ticket purchase item, may not be the best thing. However, remember, your score is going to be considered, and those are going to be hard inquiries on your credit report. So you want to make sure that you weigh out the balance of using debt settlement programs, because sometimes that is not the best option when you need to make sure that things are in place. The other thing you need to consider is that you are at a place where you are looking at maybe a hardship program. Well, the problem with a hardship program, and not that I don't condone or think you should look at a hardship program, the problem is that the hardship program winds up being something that you have to now think about in regards to, is this something that I can do? And the hardship program basically says that you're going to call the companies and try to come up with an alternative payment plan, and sometimes that could be something that provides temporary relief for you, like a deferment. So we hear deferment all the time in regards to student loans, but there is hardship programs for credit card debt and medical debt, etc., where you can ask for temporary relief for those programs and say, I need to stop making payments for a moment because I have a medical issue that I need to address, or I'm moving in a parent and I just cannot pay this at this time, or I have a child that just entered college and I'm trying to finagle some funds to make sure that child is in college and okay and settled in. So you can apply for a hardship program that gives you some temporary relief that may defer those payments for a period of time. And what that means is that you'll have maybe 6 months to not make any payments, and then you will have to start back, and you will more than likely be on a payment plan going forward. Remember, this also can cause negative credit impacts on your score. So it's not something that I necessarily tell you all to do, but I wanted you all to have this information and feel empowered that if you are just at wit's end, you might need to consider calling your company, calling the credit card company, and see if they have a hardship program. Sometimes it will not affect the score, but as I told you all a couple weeks ago, never be afraid to call a credit card company to negotiate some type of fee, because little bit of money is better than no money. And so the companies want you to stay in a place that you are making continual payments. And remember, credit card debt is only a sign of someone, for middle class people particularly, where we are just in a hamster wheel of continually to have to pay off debt. So you want to make sure that when we are talking about credit scores and hardship programs and these things, that we don't put ourselves in jeopardy for big ticket item things that we may need. A loan, a personal loan for school or things, and you get yourself in what we could consider good debt, which we will talk about next week. But make sure that we are intentionally and purposely making decisions about these programs. And then the last thing we're going to talk about for today, and we'll then continue the conversation on Friday, is debt restructuring. So a debt restructuring program basically allows you to modify the terms of your loan. So for a revolving credit card debt, maybe it's reducing the interest. Maybe it's giving you a different pay date that's closer to your paycheck. So it's the modifying the terms of your agreement. So, or loans. So if you have a personal loan, you can contact the bank or wherever you got this loan from and say, hey, I would like to restructure this loan that maybe I can modify the terms. So for example, if you owe $2,000 and you would like to not have to pay $200 a month or $100 a month until you pay this off, or you want to extend the terms of that loan. So if you have a car loan and you want to now move it from 5 years to maybe 7 or 8 years, those are things that you do for debt restructuring. Again, it all requires a conversation, and it also requires a thought that you make sure that you're doing the things you need to do. So once again, let's go over the things that we've learned today in regards to debt management mechanisms. Again, these are not things that the Legacy Builder Coach is advocating for you to do. But if you are in over your head, things I want you to consider include debt management programs, calling a program to assist you. You see them all the times on commercials. Consider those. Also, if you need to do a debt settlement, remember, a lot of these programs have negative consequences on your credit report and your credit score. But a debt settlement will allow you to make one lump sum payment, and then the debt is gone and extinguished, but it may have a negative impact on your score. The next thing is a hardship program. If you are in a place that you cannot pay the bill, you've lost your job, or you had a medical emergency that you weren't expecting, and it's going to be chronic versus acute, and you're going to have to deal with it at a longer period of time, this might be a consideration for you also. And then lastly, debt restructuring. Debt restructuring, renegotiate the terms of your agreement, whether that's with a credit card company or a loan. It modifies the terms. So if you want to extend the length and time of the loan, if you want to modify the payment terms, if you want to modify the interest, that is what a debt restructuring looks like. It modifies the terms of the agreement for you to pay back, because it then lessens the debt by lessening and changing the terms. Okay? So on Friday, we will continue this conversation. Of course, we will get into the big one, bankruptcy. Not something that I condone, but sometimes you are in a place that you have to address it. And I wanted you all to have that information so you can make an educated choice. All right, remember that we do this every Wednesday and every Friday. Wednesdays at 10 a.m., Fridays at 12 p.m. And I give you good information about finances and estate planning and all the things. Remember, for the first quarter of the year, we are talking about 3 things: reimagining the relationship and your relationship with your money. So this month we talked about debt management. Next month, February 2026, is saving and investing. And then, when we get into March, we're going to talk about how you can move into doing some of this legacy building and estate planning and things that you can do. It is a system here, because again, until you manage your debt, till you get to a point that you're comfortable with your savings and investing, it is very hard to consider estate planning when you haven't gotten to the point yet that you're comfortable with how you want to move with your money. So on Friday, we're going to finish and finalize a conversation in regards to debt management strategies, or mechanism, and then we're going to move and continue to conclude this conversation in regards to debt management. Remember that at the end of the month, on January 30th, we're going to have a class for our Inner Circle Collective members in regards to how to manage your money. The class is free, and it will be paid out live to other entities and pages, including our business page, which is the Inner Circle Collective. So again, the subscription is at the top. It's $39 a month. And remember, this is a founding members fee if you would like to join this community where we're talking about basic 5 pillars: finances, which I will be your financial coach, the legacy builder coach, LaShawn E. Michael Esquire. And then we will also talk about relationships, career, technology. We'll talk about wellness, spirituality, and then we will, of course, continue these conversations about finances. So 5 pillars, $39 a month. It's a subscription fee. And like I said, we're going to get classes. You're going to have contact with us. There's a portal, and there will be loads of content and information to help you with these 5 pillars and move you into a place that you explore, reflect, develop, and grow, because a community that grows together stays together. And that fee will change. The $39 will go up in March, so you need to be a fast taker. The subscription link is pinned to this video. All right, as always, I want you all to have a great day. Thank you for the continued support. See you on Friday while we continue the conversation about debt management mechanisms. Bye for now.